It started as an ordinary night, two sisters walking home, laughing, minding their business. But the air shifted when a group of men stepped out from the shadows, their eyes filled with something dark. They saw two black women alone and thought they had easy targets. What they didn't know: these weren't just any sisters. These were elite Special Forces operatives, trained to dismantle threats in seconds. The gang closed in, their words sharp, their intentions clear. One of them reached out, thinking he had control. Big mistake. In the blink of an eye, the tables turned. One sister moved first, fast, precise, unstoppable. The other followed, perfectly in sync. The men who thought they had power were about to learn a brutal lesson. They picked the wrong victims. What happened next would leave them questioning everything. But by then, it was already too late. The gang didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. One moment, they were grinning, confident, ready to strike. The next, one of them was gasping for breath, his wrist twisted at an impossible angle. The sisters hadn't even broken a sweat. Keisha and Maya had spent years training in the most dangerous situations imaginable, missions that pushed them to their limits, where hesitation meant failure. But they never expected to use their skills here, on a quiet city street, against men who had no idea who they were messing with. The leader of the gang hesitated, sensing something was off. These women weren't panicked. They weren't pleading. They were calm, too calm. His instincts screamed at him to back away, but his pride wouldn't let him. Instead of walking away, he made a choice he'd regret, because the twins weren't done yet. The leader clenched his fists, his pride bruised. He wasn't used to feeling powerless, especially not in front of his crew. With a quick signal, the others surrounded the sisters, thinking sheer numbers would tip the odds in their favor. But Keisha and Maya exchanged only a glance, silent, knowing they had been through worse. One of the men lunged, expecting fear. Instead, he was met with precision. Maya sidestepped, her movements effortless, sending him stumbling into his own friend. Keisha's reflexes were just as sharp, her hands moving faster than the gang could process. A swift maneuver, and another man was down, groaning, clutching his shoulder. The tension thickened. The gang wasn't backing down, but doubt flickered in their eyes. This was supposed to be easy. It wasn't. From the alley, someone watched, a figure in the shadows. Not part of the gang, but not entirely neutral either, and they weren't leaving anytime soon. The leader's confidence wavered, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. He pulled a chain from around his fist, wrapping it tight. "You think you're tough," he sneered. "Let's see how tough you really are." Keisha and Maya didn't flinch. They had studied men like him before, bullies who thrived on intimidation. But fear wasn't part of their training. The gang shifted, closing the circle tighter, their frustration boiling over. They had never faced opponents who didn't cower, didn't panic. That only made them angrier. Then, a low whistle cut through the tension. The figure in the shadows stepped forward, slow, deliberate. He was older, his presence commanding, like someone who had seen more than his fair share of fights. The gang turned, uneasy. They knew him, and judging by their faces, they weren't sure if that was a good thing. Maya's muscles tensed. Whoever this was, he wasn't just passing by. He had been watching, waiting, and now he was ready to make his move. The man in the shadows took a step closer, his presence shifting the air. His eyes scanned the scene, Keisha and Maya standing firm, the gang rattled but still determined. Then his gaze locked onto the leader. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice calm but edged with something dangerous. The gang leader stiffened. He knew that voice. It belonged to someone he had crossed before, someone he didn't want to owe anything to. Keisha and Maya noticed the hesitation, the unspoken tension between the gang and this mysterious stranger. Who was he? An enemy? An ally? Neither. One thing was certain, he wasn't here by accident. Then the twist Nyla's sister saw coming. The man turned to them. "You don't belong here," he said, almost like a warning. And if you stay, you won't like what happens next. For the first time that night, uncertainty crept in. This fight wasn't over. It was only getting started. The air grew thick with tension. Keisha and Maya didn't move, their instincts razor-sharp. The gang was on edge, their confidence slipping, but they weren't ready to walk away, not yet. And then there was the stranger, standing between them all, his warning hanging in the air like a loaded gun. The leader of the gang exhaled sharply, gripping the chain in his fist. "I don't take orders from you," he growled at the man. His pride wouldn't let him back down, not in front of his crew. With a furious yell, he charged. That was his final mistake. Maya moved first, ducking low as the chain swung past her face. Keisha struck next, her fist landing clean against his ribs, forcing him back. The gang scrambled, but it was chaos now, nothing like the control they thought they had. Within seconds, 2 more men were on the ground, groaning, realizing too late that they had never stood a chance. And then, just as the last one stumbled back, hands up in surrender, the stranger made his move. He stepped forward, eyes locked on the gang leader, and said something only he could hear. Whatever it was, it drained the last bit of fight from the man's face. Without another word, the gang turned and scattered, vanishing into the night. Keisha and Maya exchanged a glance, their breathing steady. The fight was over, but one question remained. The stranger turned to them, his expression unreadable. "You too," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You're not the only ones watching your backs. Be careful." And just like that, he was gone. Maya exhaled, shaking her head. What just happened? Keisha didn't answer, because for the first time in a long time she wasn't sure. Keisha and Maya stood in the quiet street, the adrenaline still fading from their bodies. The gang was gone. The fight was over. But the stranger's words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Maya glanced around, half expecting him to still be there watching. "Who was that guy?" she muttered. Keisha shook her head. Someone who knew more than he was letting on. Her instincts told her this wasn't random. The gang, the fight, the warning, it all felt connected. But to what? For now, there were no clear answers, only the knowledge that they had handled the situation like they always did, together. No matter what came next, they would be ready. As they walked away, the city lights stretched ahead, the night still full of possibilities. Whatever danger was lurking in the shadows, one thing was certain: Keisha and Maya weren't just survivors. They were the storm no one saw coming.